According to experts, Homo neanderthalensis, also referred to in some classifications as Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, was a late archaic form of human that diverged from modern human lineages no earlier than 500,000 years ago, and mostly vanished from Europe and parts of Asia by around 40,000 years ago. Many researchers now regard Neanderthals as a subspecies, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, primarily due to their morphological and genetic overlap with Homo sapiens sapiens. This shared heritage is more extensive than once assumed. In fact, genetic evidence reveals that many living humans carry traces of Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. In particular, recent work has shown that Neanderthals had the full range of the ABO blood group system, rather than being exclusively type O as was once hypothesized. One study found that a 100,000-year-old Neanderthal woman from Siberia's Denisova cave had type A blood. Another Neanderthal woman from nearby Chagaskaya cave, dated to 48,000 years ago, also had type A. And a third Neanderthal woman from Croatia's Vindia cave, dated to around 64,000 years ago, had type B. These discoveries suggest that the genetic ancestors of both Neanderthals and modern humans already possessed A, B, and O alleles well before the two groups diverged. This aligns with evidence that chimpanzees typically have type A and gorillas typically have type B, indicating that these blood group variations may extend far back in the hominin lineage. Even more striking was the discovery that all three Neanderthals carried a very rare rhesus factor variant called rhesus plus incomplete. Previously, it had only been detected in one individual in Australia's Western Desert region and in about 80 people in Papua New Guinea. Initially, scientists thought rhesus plus incomplete was a new variation that emerged in Australia, but the Neanderthal samples revealed that this unusual blood factor existed at least 50,000 to 100,000 years ago, possibly more broadly, and simply disappeared from most modern populations over time. This variation may have caused complications in interbreeding events between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Because of mismatched blood group traits, there could be about a 1 in 5 chance of hemolytic disease affecting offspring. Such a risk might have limited extensive gene flow or reduced the viability of certain pregnancies, helping explain why only some Neanderthal genes persist in present-day humans. Nonetheless, we know from genetic studies of modern populations that a limited but significant degree of interbreeding did take place, leaving behind a Neanderthal genetic signature in people outside of Africa. In addition to blood type issues, other biological factors might have influenced Neanderthal sapiens interbreeding. Studies of Neanderthal childhood growth rates indicate that Neanderthal children appear to have grown quickly in their early years, fueled by a high-protein, high-fat diet supporting their large brains. This rapid brain and body growth might have posed a metabolic strain on Neanderthal mothers, requiring them to consume substantial calories while nursing. It may also have extended the interbirth interval, leading to lower overall birth rates and smaller population sizes, in contrast with many early Homo sapiens groups who may have had more flexible social structures and more varied diets. It has been suggested that the expansion of Homo sapiens populations put additional pressure on Neanderthal groups already stressed by environmental fluctuations. Still, genetic evidence shows that these two populations did meet, mate, and exchange genes. Whether Neanderthal women found early modern human men appealing, or whether modern human women preferred Neanderthal males, or both, is not fully understood. Some data suggest that Homo sapiens females in certain regions seem to prefer Denisovan males, implied by the relatively high percentage of Denisovan ancestry in some groups, such as those found in Papua New Guinea. However, other studies have concluded that interbreeding between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens was more bidirectional than previously thought. Genetic research on Neanderthal Y chromosomes was particularly revealing. Initially, scientists believed that the Neanderthal Y chromosome would differ significantly from the modern human one. Instead, analysis of 3 male Neanderthal individuals who lived between 38,000 and 53,000 years ago showed Y chromosomes similar to modern humans. This suggests that, sometime before these late Neanderthals lived, genetic exchanges with Homo sapiens men may have become so frequent that the older, distinct Neanderthal Y chromosome lineages were replaced. Meanwhile, other scientists examined Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA, which is only passed from mothers to offspring. Their findings showed that some Neanderthals carried what looked like early modern human mitochondrial signatures, implying that male Neanderthals had at least occasionally fathered children with modern human women. The timeline for these interactions is estimated between 270,000 and 100,000 years ago, presumably during warmer climatic intervals that allowed populations to expand and come into contact. Yet many gaps remain regarding the precise social and cultural conditions under which these two human lineages met. Some archaeologists point to anthropological models of patriarchality or group alliances, wherein women from one community might be exchanged or might relocate upon marriage. Ludovic Slimak, a French archaeologist, has suggested that such patterns would have been crucial in the interaction between distinct groups, because foraging communities often reinforce alliances or strengthen trade networks by formalized marriages or partner exchanges. The fact that later Neanderthals do carry traces of ancient Homo sapiens DNA, yet do not exhibit the genes of more recent modern Homo sapiens, is one of the remaining puzzles. We know that Neanderthals had some archaic Homo sapiens genetic material from an older wave of contacts, yet they lacked the more recent modern human DNA found in all living non-African populations today. One possible explanation is that as modern populations spread around 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, they replaced or absorbed Neanderthal communities, leaving minimal genetic impact in the final dwindling Neanderthal groups. Another factor contributing to the downfall of Neanderthals is evidence of large-scale environmental disasters around 40,000 years ago. A series of volcanic eruptions in what is now Italy and across the Caucasus region seems to have devastated local ecosystems. In particular, the Campanian ignimbrite eruption near present-day Naples was a massive event that spewed ash across thousands of square miles. Sediment cores, like those taken from Mezmaïskaya cave in Russia, show layers with dense volcanic ash and a sharp decline or near-total absence of plant pollen, implying that vegetation may have been wiped out or severely curtailed. This would have led to a catastrophic loss of herbivores, thereby reducing the availability of the large game on which Neanderthal populations depended. Though Neanderthals were robust and had survived multiple ice ages, the scale and synchrony of these volcanic eruptions may have been unprecedented. Such sudden upheavals, combined with the onset of abrupt climatic shifts during the glacial period from about 65,000 to 25,000 years ago, likely placed enormous stress on already small and scattered Neanderthal bands. Meanwhile, anatomically modern humans with different subsistence strategies and potentially more flexible social networks may have withstood these shocks more effectively. The older view that Neanderthals were knuckle-dragging, half-ape brutes, a myth entrenched by outdated reconstructions such as the famous La Chapelle aux Singes skeleton, has been discredited by modern science. More recent 3D virtual reconstructions of the same skeletal remains indicate that Neanderthals had a fully erect posture. The slouching depiction that circulated widely in the early 20th century was the result of analyzing an elderly Neanderthal male who had arthritis and other degenerative conditions, thus misleading early paleoanthropologists to conclude that his stooped stance was typical of all Neanderthals. Likewise, the idea that Neanderthals lacked language and culture has given way to evidence that they engaged in complex behaviors, possibly used pigments for symbolic reasons, crafted tools in an organized manner, controlled fire, and likely cared for their injured or sick. They also appear to have buried their dead in some locations, suggesting ritual or social bonding practices. While their artistic or symbolic expressions might not have matched the prolific cave paintings and carvings we associate with later Upper Paleolithic Homo sapiens, the gap is not as vast as once assumed. Another intriguing aspect of Neanderthals is their probable possession of a hyoid bone similar to modern humans, which would have been essential in producing a wide range of sounds. Though definitive proof of complex language is lacking, many researchers propose that some proto-linguistic or even fully linguistic capacities were present, enabling them to manage the social dynamics of hunting large game, raising children in harsh environments, and maintaining group cohesion. As modern humans and Neanderthals overlapped in both time and territory, it is easy to imagine that moments of curiosity and sharing, as well as fear and conflict, arose between them. A hypothetical encounter might involve a small group of Homo sapiens stumbling upon a Neanderthal campsite or a lone Neanderthal venturing near a modern human settlement, observing from the shadows before deciding whether to approach. In such moments, gestures would replace language barriers, shared resources might be offered, and alliances could be formed or trust broken. In some cases, the need for collaboration, perhaps against mutual threats like large predators or extreme weather, would create openings for deeper connections. These connections might occasionally lead to the birth of children carrying a blend of both lineages' genes. Although the precise nature of these relationships, cooperative, hostile, or something in between, cannot be reconstructed in detail, The genetic legacy left in modern humans proves that some measure of interbreeding did in fact happen. Another hypothetical scenario might involve larger-scale exchange between small Neanderthal bands and incoming groups of Homo sapiens, culminating in an evening by a communal fire where each side observes the stranger's gestures and attempts to interpret them. Over time, offerings of food, ornamentation, or even intangible knowledge, such as flint-knapping techniques, could be shared. Modern humans might show the Neanderthals new ways of cutting hides, preparing spears, or using pigments, while Neanderthals might demonstrate routes through familiar terrain or strategies for bringing down large Ice Age fauna. Such cultural interplay, if it occurred, would have varied from region to region, depending on local resources, climate pressures, and individual group dynamics. Eventually, as climatic volatility increased and resources grew scarce, the advantage may have tipped definitively toward Homo sapiens, who were often more numerous, displayed greater mobility, and perhaps had more robust social networks for trade and cooperation across larger distances. Under these compounded pressures, Neanderthal numbers seem to have shrunk, and the surviving groups likely found it harder to maintain distinct populations. Even so, their genetic, cultural, and biological contributions remain embedded in modern human lineages. Research on Neanderthal DNA indicates that segments of their genetic code can influence present-day traits, including immune system functioning, hair color, skin tone, and other subtle characteristics. There is also preliminary evidence linking some Neanderthal-derived gene variants to increased susceptibility or resistance to specific diseases, showing that their legacy is a double-edged sword. Some inherited genes may be beneficial, while others may predispose us to certain conditions. This underscores that far from being an irrelevant side branch, Neanderthals directly shaped aspects of who we are. Looking back, the extinction of Neanderthals was not a sudden event with a single cause, but rather a gradual process shaped by forces such as volcanic catastrophes, erratic climate changes, demographic competition, interbreeding complexities, and cultural interplay. The era between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago was a time of monumental transition in Europe and parts of Asia, with Homo sapiens migrating across territories that Neanderthals had dominated for millennia. The final Neanderthals, holding on in refugia, may still have eked out an existence in fragmented enclaves before their populations ultimately vanished as a distinct group. Yet as more fossils are unearthed and more advanced methods of extracting ancient DNA are refined, we continue to fill in these prehistoric details. Even 150 years after the first recognized Neanderthal fossil was discovered in Germany's Neander Valley, our picture of them remains in flux. Each discovery, whether it involves an unusual bone shape, a surprising artifact, or a newly sequenced genome, reveals that they were far more similar to us than earlier scientists ever imagined. The old stereotype of a hunched brute has been replaced by a portrait of a resilient, adaptive group of humans who endured multiple ice ages, volcanic winters, and sometimes thrived in conditions that would challenge modern humans. Although we still cannot say with absolute certainty what Neanderthal language, social customs, or inner lives were like, the emerging evidence points toward a people who innovated, communicated, and related to the world in complex ways. Their eventual disappearance likely stemmed from the sum of environmental shocks, resource pressures, and competition with growing Homo sapiens populations. Interbreeding did occur, though not always at rates sufficient to keep Neanderthal groups viable. Over tens of thousands of years, those once separate lineages blurred in certain regions, leaving behind a genetic inheritance that modern people outside of Africa generally carry at low levels. In this sense, Neanderthals never truly vanished. Part of them persists in us, reminding us of the diverse branches of humanity that have existed. In the popular imagination, Neanderthals went from being caricatures of primitiveness to intriguing cousins whose biology, culture, and fate hold crucial lessons about adaptation and resilience. By studying how they and other archaic humans responded to dramatic shifts in climate, food availability, and competition, we gain broader insight into what shaped our own species' evolution and survival strategies. The interplay of factors that ended the Neanderthal story underscores how fragile life can be when confronted by environmental upheavals and demographic pressures. Ultimately, they remain a mirror in which we see an alternative version of ourselves, one that thrived for hundreds of thousands of years in challenging environments, yet could not endure the final confluence of challenges. Perhaps the greatest tribute to them lies in our continued fascination and in the moral lessons we might draw about cooperation, adaptability, and empathy across human differences. Even if we cannot precisely know how those ancient encounters between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens played out, whether marked by peaceful collaboration, mutual curiosity, tension, or violence, the reality is that we share a deep evolutionary bond with them. Our stories and genes are intertwined across time, and so as we reflect on these extinct relatives who walked the same earth, we are reminded of how much there is still to discover and how many mysteries remain in the hidden chapters of our collective past. We leave you with this final reflection. The next time you look in the mirror, remember that your face may carry echoes of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other archaic kin who once roamed this planet. Their legacy in our blood, our traits, and our shared story is an enduring reminder that humanity has always been shaped by encounters, migrations, and intermingling lineages. Until we uncover more evidence, let us remain curious about the endless saga of human evolution and the lives of those who came before us, forging a path that continues to shape our world. Thank you for watching and engaging with this exploration of our ancestors. Stay inquisitive, keep questioning, and explore the endless depths of prehistory whenever you can. Please subscribe and share, and check out our other videos if you wish to delve further into the mysteries of our collective human heritage.